Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for a round of Scottish gin. We're delighted to have James Porteous tonight. For those of you that don't know James, he is founder of Electric Spirit Company, who create this beautiful liquid that goes in this beautiful bottle, Acrus Gin. So I'm sure if you've seen our social media, you've seen us post about James. So I think we've got a sneak peek of him there, but we'll bring him back in. Are you there?
Sorry, I've turned my microphone off, so I didn't.
No, good for you, playing by the rules. No, good to see you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in my kitchen at home after a day at the distillery, so having a small beverage.
Good for you, a wind down. Yeah. So, I was gonna say, what have you been drinking in lockdown? But what specifically are you drinking there? That looks good.
I'm a fiend for a Negroni. I always have been. Even before I got into this kind of distilling side of things. But yeah, this is a Negroni, shockingly made with my own gin. To be fair, I've got a few others in the spirits cabinet as well. So just looking over, there's a bottle of Glaswegian. There's a bottle that my brother gave me actually from a place in Germany in Cologne, which is the oldest Kolsch brewery in Cologne, and they also do a bit of distilling. And we've just finished a bottle of Lone Wolf as well, which I've had for a while. Actually, I got off Stephen Kersley at an event up in Aberdeen a while back. But yeah, it's just generally try to drink other people's gin because it becomes a bit of a busman's holiday when if you're kind of drinking your own stuff all the time, especially after a day at the distillery. But yeah, other than my gin, so obviously my gin, in case you have not somehow missed it. And I've got a bottle of this, which is effectively it's Americano. So it's kind of a slightly aromatic wine, bitters kind of thing, which is available from Tuto Wines. If you want to try it, it's really nice, great just with a little spritz. It's not as bitter as a Campari, but it's still a lot of flavour, works really well in the place of Campari. If you just want something a little bit more mellow, a little bit less bitter.
Yeah.
And then just an absolute kind of old school good vermouth, Punty May, and yeah, just equal parts tonight. I tend to put in a bit more gin than normally, just because I like a little bit more flavour from the gin. But tonight I just went 35 ml of each, stirred with ice, and I didn't have any orange. There's no garnish at all. So.
Well, I've actually heard. I'm ashamed to say I love a Negroni, but I'm ashamed to say I've not tried your gin with a Negroni yet. But I've seen that mentioned quite a lot. That the actress is good in a Negroni, so I must get on that.
Yeah, you get a little bit of the kind of fennelly kind of tickle from it coming through. I think the thing with any gin and Negroni's a big drink, and it's got a lot of flavour coming from both those other ingredients. So it's when you pick a gin, you got to pick something that's got like a good bit of character that's going to cut through that bitterness of a like a Campari and that sweetness from the vermouth. So I think with my gin, you get quite a good hit of the fennel, and you also get a little bit of kind of that kind of woody floral character from the Szechuan peppercorns as well, a little bit coming through in the nose. So I think as a Negroni gin, it works really quite nicely. So
lovely. And I know you probably had a couple of drinks over the weekend. Hot off the press, you for anyone who didn't hear the news, you obviously got double gold from the San Francisco World Spirits Competition, which is huge. I know less than 30 out of 2,500 applicants. So
yeah, I think I can't remember. It was about that number. Yeah, it's kind of one of these ones that first and foremost, yeah, I'm not going to be cool about it. It was awesome. I was
yeah.
On Thursday night, I got the most kind of bland email ever, and it was just like completely boilerplate. And I was like kind of going through it. And I said congratulations. I just thought it was going to be like, unfortunately, whatever. And it got to the bottom, and it was like name of distillery, name of gin, double gold, and that was it. And I was like, my wife was sitting beside me on the sofa and was just kind of like, "Are you okay? You've gone very quiet. What's happened?" I was like, "Something very good has happened." And it was quite late on because the time difference is massive. I was just like, I'm too tired to kind of think about this. But yeah, on Friday it was just kind of like, I didn't really know what to say. It was just absolutely mental. But no, it was good. I completely screwed up on it actually, because it's really difficult to send a bottle of gin to America. which sounds like a really kind of how useless are you as a human if you can't send a ball to another country. But they're very they're very militant about their bureaucracy, and you have to like register your distillery as an American food production site. You have to fill in all these, put extra stickers all over the bottle. You have to get someone to import it, even though it's just like for a competition entry, and they help you with that. And I thought, I was like, I'm nailing this. I'm getting it all perfect, brilliant. Got it over there, checking the tracking, perfect. And then it arrived, and I was just checking the tracking, brilliant. Went to email them, and I was like, I don't know what the address is. Google San Francisco, and they were announcing the winners.
Oh no! Yeah, okay. Because that was back in March, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of looked at it and was like, but what? And then realized that all this had taken so long that even though I'd gone through it all probably, it had just taken so long to put it all together and get it set out that I'd sailed past the deadline. But the thing was, it's because of what's happened this year. They were actually done a second round of judging because so many people's entries were delayed through kind of no fault of their own, and they put it in for that round, and then they were like, "We'll get back to you when we were able to do a tasting." And I didn't hear any more, and I didn't think anything more about it, and then got that email on Thursday, and then there we go.
Brilliant, fantastic.
Happy weekend was had.
Absolutely, and I know you don't. I don't think you tend to go for a lot of competitions. I know you had a design award earlier in the year, in which you did particularly well as well. So how do you kind of select what you go for?
I think, it's tricky because there's so many awards. Like as a distiller, you get emails like every week with someone saying enter this, and then a lot of information about why it's so important to enter that award. And it's very difficult to kind of decide which ones are important and which ones are I don't want to be mean to other awards. That's not what I mean, but like, which are the most important for your company? The ones you want to associate your brand with.
Yeah.
And for me, the two big ones were the International Wine and Spirits Competition, the IWSCs, and the San Francisco competition. Those were the ones in my mind that was like, they're the ones I want to enter. And I hadn't. I was speaking to Sean Murphy, who used to work for the Scotsman. He's now over at the Daily Record. But I was saying that like, I had 2 years of entering the Scottish Gin Awards and getting absolutely nowhere with the actual gin. And as a distiller, that really like gives you the fear that you've come up with something that like nobody likes this. I've got this wrong. Like it's not a good gin. So it's quite like there's a lot of kind of personal.
Of course. Yeah.
Currency, or not currency is the right word, but personal kind of thing vested in this.
Yeah.
So I was very reluctant to actually enter any awards because I was just scared of getting told like your gin's crap, please take it away from us. So I entered the IWSC just because I was like, you need to get past this, and then it did really well in that, and that was amazing. And then I was just like, right, if someone's thought it's decent, then it might actually be all right, and then put it in again for the San Francisco one. They're notoriously selective over what they like, and then it got that, and it's just been absolutely incredible. I think like to win both those back to back in terms of two competitions effectively within 12 months is those two medals are just, I couldn't really hope for more.
Absolutely. No, cheers to that. Well done. Honestly, that's good for you.
Cheers.
So I feel like I'm asking all the questions. I always do this. I'm hogging
the limelight. No, on you go.
No, it's your turn.
Are you sure?
Yeah, go for it.
If I got your permission.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've met before, James, in the past and chatted about different things, but can you tell us a bit more about your background and sort of how you got into the world of gin and spirits and distillation?
Yeah, sure. So, Chris, I mean, how far back do you want to go? My undergrad degree is in product design from Glasgow School of Art, and I studied there I can't remember, ages ago. And I left there and I went to work in London as in service design, which no one knows what it is. And I'm not going to bother telling you because nobody cares. Think of it as kind of like management consultancy crossed with creativity. It's not very good. Basically I did it for 3 years and I didn't enjoy it. And I realized that I wanted to do something more creative. there was a bunch of things. So my dad died when I was in London, and I was very kind of like, made me kind of go like, right, I'm not enjoying this. Why am I doing it? I need to kind of think about what's important to me. And I really wanted to move back to Edinburgh with my girlfriend at the time. And then I also wanted to run my own business. And I realized that I didn't want to do what I was doing. So I needed to change my career. And I kind of thought, well, what other things can I do? And at that point, like companies like Beavertown and Colonel and these little craft breweries, I say little now, obviously now some of them are global juggernauts, but these companies down there were just kind of getting going and were finding their feet. And Beavertown in particular had a little pub in Haggerston in North London called Duke's Brew and Q, and it was like it was an old boozer that they'd bought over, and they put in their brew kit in the basement, and they had a barbecue kitchen in the back, and they were pouring their own beers that they made in the basement on the bar, and it was amazing. And like I had mates who used to come down to London for work, and we used to go there and drink and have dinner, and I was like, this is amazing. And there was nothing like it at all at that point, and kind of kicking around in Edinburgh. So I was like, right, this is where I want to go with this. So I was like, I'm going to start a brew pub in Edinburgh. That was the plan. Obviously, I'm not talking to you as someone who was a brew pub in Edinburgh. So I moved back to Scotland. I applied for a place on the Heriot Watt Brewing Distilling master's degree, and got in. And then me and my girlfriend moved back up to Edinburgh, and yeah, I just cracked on with that for 12 months at uni, and then it took me about a year after that to get everything up and running afterwards. But yeah, basically while I was at uni, I realized that distilling was the thing that really fascinated me, because you can play around with recipe development really quickly compared to brewing, where there's a lot of kind of waiting around for things to happen. Obviously, if I was doing whiskey, then we'd be waiting around a lot longer. But white spirits you can play around quite rapidly and do a lot of kind of iterative development. So that really appealed to me. And then just got the distillery up and running. Initially on like a tiny little student flat kitchen sized room, like really, really pokey little place down in Leith, and on a little 20 litre still, 10 litres to start with actually, and then 20 litres. And then, just got the first few bottles out and started selling it locally, and it kind of went from there.
And so was Actus your first, that was I know it's your flagship gin. I know you've done a few others.
Yes, the first gin I ever made was a different one called Batch Zero. And that was just like, I was trying to get all my licenses and my premises sorted, and then my friend Jack Mayo, who did the brewing distilling course with me, who's worked in several distilleries since then, but at that point he was the head distiller at Glasgow Distillery, and him and his boss were just like, come and do a batch here if you want to kind of make something, so you've got something to go and talk to people about. So I made about 90 bottles worth of gin on that kind of recipe. It's kind of cardamom forward flavor profile in it, and so made that, just bottled it up, and the kind of bottles originally were all like hand painted because I didn't have any, I hadn't got everything sorted out in terms of the design of everything. So everything was hand painted, hand stamped, hand labeled, and hand filled, the works. It was just like, get it out there and let people try something to show that I actually can hopefully make a gin. And then made that, and that was the first one, and that was it was just a one-off. And then since then I've done a few other things. I've done a gin for the North Hop festivals that were going for a while. I've done little things for my friends actually. We did one of them was I just did some branded up bottles for him basically, but his business is a kind of Christmas present. But we also did a daft thing where he came along at Christmas, and I asked each of my three friends to pick a botanical, like a weird botanical to put in the gin. So we ended up with like, I think it was like raspberries, caramel wafers, and orange peel or something. I can't remember, but
Did it taste good?
It tasted mostly of orange peel, because citrus is like so powerful, but it wasn't unpleasant, and it was a good laugh. But I think playing around with just stuff like that is fun. And I did the other one I've done was a gin called Not Another Effing Gin, which was actually a kind of fun creative project with the guys from the Leith Agency in Edinburgh, and they wanted to do something. They did the branding side and the whole concept of it, and then I helped kind of come up with a recipe for their gin. So that was just a one-off as well, but it was like a kind of portfolio piece for them, I guess, to kind of show what they could do if they were designing a brand for a spirits company. And the last thing is, like, I've done a few little random projects for guys that have got bars and restaurants around Edinburgh as well, just doing little things with Timberyard Restaurant. I've done some single botanical distillates of things that Joe Radford there, who's got an amazing drinks mind. He just comes out, like, he finds botanicals and is like, can we make something out of this? I'm like, yeah, sure. Let me just check there's nothing poisonous in it. It's always the first thing you search for when someone gives you a botanical. Is it going to kill people? We've done a few different things, but I think the best one was we did this straight lemon verbena distillate on this little rotary evaporator, so a vacuum still that I've got. And it tasted like lemon drops, and it was absolutely incredible. There's no lemon in it at all. It's just from lemon verbena, but it's like sucking one of those little boiled sweets. It's so intense. But yeah, just fun little stuff like that. I mean, I only do the one gin at the moment. I'd like to do another one, but it's just the kind of snowballing effect of having to make that one gin lots and do everything about it. It means it's kind of actually putting time aside to make that next one. It always seems to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it, and then it just gets chased away by the realities of doing everything kind of production side on my own. So
and there's the demand for Acrus, which is great, which is what you want, and it's been a standout product. So can you describe the flavour profile for us, for those who might not have tasted it?
So I'll give you my best shot. I always think describing flavor is one of these weird things, because, like, then people taste it and they're like, what is he on about? But the idea with it was to kind of start with, keep it simple would be the first kind of principle of it, I guess. So one, it's a gin. It's got a big bundle of juniper in there. In terms of, I know, like, other people who, the gin industry, people kind of have a general idea of what other people's recipes have in them just from tasting it and also chatting to people, because we're all quite pally and we talk about your products with each other. But there's a lot of juniper in there. And that, first and foremost, for me, the gin needed to have that astringency in the sides of your mouth. It's got to work with a tonic. If it's not got that bitterness, then you end up with a kind of watery, vodka-y kind of thing, and it just doesn't work for me. The rest of it is kind of 7 botanicals in total. So the other kind of key ones, I would say, is Angelica root. There's a fair amount of that, so it's got quite a musty character to it. So it's got almost a kind of, it's not barrel aged, but it gives it that kind of woody character from that. Licorice root, again, a little bit of sweetness. People always think when they taste it and I say licorice root, it's like, oh yeah, I get that flavor of licorice, but it's from the two kind of, well, one of the two more unusual ingredients. So fennel seed. Licorice root is actually just like, if you chew on it, it's quite sweet. It doesn't really have much. It's like chewing a bit of wood that sort of gives a little bit kind of non-specific sweetness to it. But the fennel seed is absolutely loaded with that kind of big anise flavor that you would expect from like a gobstopper or like something like a sambuca or an ouzo. I hate using those as examples because they've ruined aniseed as a flavor in drinks for a lot of people. And then Szechuan peppercorn is just this little mad kind of thing at the end. And I'd say that the two kind of things, the 5 core ones are the backbone of it. If I made a gin with that, it would be a good, dry, straightforward gin. The 2 at the end are the things that give it a little bit of a flourish. So it's basically a London dry with a little bit of a twist at the end. So it's still very much going to work in all these classic gin cocktails, but it's also got that little bit of aniseed flavor, not too much because of those guys that I mentioned before about the sambucas and the aftershocks of the world. And then just that at the end from the Szechuan peppercorn, it's got this lovely, very kind of vibrant, sherbety citrus quality to it, and then a really big woody and floral aroma to it as well. So I think as a gin, it's quite, I'd say it's quite oily, it's not sweet, it's not heading towards the liqueur end of the market, and it's a kind of, it's not a beginner's gin, I would say. So you're going to be coming to that after you've been kind of like, right, I'm fine with London dries, I'm comfortable with that kind of bitterness, and then it's got a bit more of a complexity to it in terms of those 2 more unusual ones at the end.
Fantastic, great. And I know you've done the botanicals piece for us on Szechuan peppercorn before. I love that story. Tell us, assuming no one had read that, which I'm sure they have.
Yeah.
But how did you come across it? I quite like that story.
So I was meeting a friend of mine, Kieran, who had been at I think at the Edinburgh Science Festival at Summer Hall, bottle, and it was all about flavor perception, and it was all about how you traditionally, like when we talk about something being flavored like something, if you say something, oh, that's really appley, or that tastes of that's really like, well, in this case, lemony. We say that because lemon is our frame of reference. It's the thing we associate the most with it. But there's loads of ingredients in the world that have that flavor, but we associate them with this kind of main one. Yeah. So this one, the Szechuan peppercorn, was like, if you've ever seen them, they're funny little things. They look like hard, sad little husks, and they're basically like dry and miserable. And you wouldn't think, looking at them, you'd think they'd just be like really spicy and quite unpleasant. But if you put one of them on your tongue, you get a real kind of different character to it. And Kieran came back from this to meet me in the pub, and he had a little one of these little sauce punnets you get at McDonald's, and in it had a bunch of Szechuan peppercorns. And he said, right, put one of these on your tongue. And put one on my tongue, and I was like, wow, that's like fizzy, like tingly lemon, like so much lemon. There's this huge lemony flavor. And I was like, that's amazing. I would never think that. And he's like, right, take it off your tongue and like drink your pint. And I was like, took a swig of my pint, and it was like, whoa, that made my pint taste like so citrusy, and it was just a really kind of, I've never had that kind of experience with putting like that kind of thing on your palate, and then it having a kind of follow-on effect with the thing you're tasting. The only problem with the Szechuan peppercorns in that way is that flavor hangs around for ages. So like 3 pints later, I was still like, great, this beer tastes like lemons, Kieran. Thank you for this. Yeah. But it really kind of opened my eyes to this ingredient. And when you distill with it, there's a compound in it called alpha hydroxysanchule, which I should have done that beforehand before saying what it was. But it's effectively a numbing compound. And if you ever eat any Szechuan cooking, I made dan noodles the other week, and it's got them in it as an ingredient. It makes your mouth feel like you've licked a 9-volt battery. It's just that kind of your tongue goes a bit, and the problem with that in a drink is that you don't want to wipe out your palate because it's completely counterintuitive. So with this, the good thing when you distill with them, as long as you don't go completely nuts, you get the flavor, but you don't get that numbing compound coming over. And yeah, it just gives they've got this beautiful aroma to them. It's like floral, and it smells like an old kind of wooden cabinet that's been filled with spices, and it smells incredible. And then on the palate, it's still got that citrusy thing, and it really works to kind of balance out the juniper in the gin, instead of using like lemon peel or other citrus peels or anything like that. So yeah, it's just I loved it because it was such a zany little, like batshit crazy ingredient effectively, and I had no idea something like that existed before Kieran came in at the pub with a little tub of them. So Kieran Spears is to blame for the Szechuan peppercorns in Acherus. So.
Great. Obviously, your bottle, I would say, is probably amongst the sort of standout sort of packaging when it comes to Scottish gins. I mean, obviously, since your bottle, there's been other sort of gins that have came out, and they've obviously focused more on the glass. But, you know, straight off the shelf, the first thing you see in any bottle shop is this bright orange glow calling your name to come over and investigate. So I guess, can you tell us a bit more about the evolution of your bottle?
Yeah, so when I was starting out, because my background was in design, I was kind of, the difficulty when you start making gin and you want to do something different is that doing something different, one, costs a lot, and two, involves large quantities of the thing you're trying to make. So if you want to do a custom bottle, that's fine. It'll cost you lots, and you'll need to buy a lot of them, neither of which was really an option when I started, because I was doing everything on a totally tiny scale. So I was trying to figure out a way of doing, like, having a bottle that wasn't like other people's bottles who were starting out. And other people, when you start out, you're like, well, my options are I buy a generic bottle and then I do an interesting label. And it's like, right, is there any way around this? So I found a company that did coating, so effectively the color of that bottle, and so they were coating them, they were shipping them up to me, and then every single one of them was being inked by hand with a Christmas card stamp, for the first God knows how many thousand. And that was great. And it allowed me to get the idea of what I wanted for less money than it would cost, because they were doing a pallet at a time. So it meant I didn't have to kind of find space for 5 pallets of bottles, never mind buy 5 pallets of bottles. So it just got things up and running. Yeah. And it just meant that I had a bottle that was very distinctive and, like you say, kind of stood out on the shelf. Because from working and when I've worked in bars, like, it's having huge gin selections in bars is great, but it means that there's real competition between brands for choice. And if you have something that people ask about, as soon as you start a conversation with a bartender, then you're already halfway to ordering the drink. So there's the two sides of it are, one, it's a design thing because I'm a nerd and I like kind of designing things a bit differently, but two, it's really kind of quite behavioral sciencey. It's people engaging in conversation about something and then go on to order it because they've already started that conversation. So from speaking to bars that have it, the feedback is generally that once like people have gone like, what the hell is that? Then they're probably going to order it. So it was a very kind of functional reason. Although, as one of my mates who worked for one of the big distilling companies said when I showed him the initial design for it, and he's like, looked at it and kind of nodded, and he was like, your gin better be bloody good.
Yeah, there's maybe that expectation, isn't there, I suppose, when someone sees a standout bottle that I mean, they expect the liquid to match up. I think as well as if it's good, but it's got to have that kind of like, if it was just a fairly plain London Dry, it really wouldn't marry up with it. So it was kind of thinking about, right, what matches up with the vibrance of the bottle. You've got to marry up with a really vibrant kind of different spirit inside, and without going completely off the reservation and doing something that just becomes a novelty or a gimmick. So I think there's a real kind of balance, both in terms of design, in terms of creating a recipe for a gin, where you have to kind of go, okay, I need to do something different, but not different for the sake of it. It's got to be like in itself a good quality product, regardless of the packaging it's in. And then exactly the other way around, is the packaging's got to be good on its own, rather than just being a kind of like a nice thing to have, but ultimately it's only going to sit on a shelf. So
and one thing I noticed earlier on when I was looking at your branding and your bottle is the fact there's actually a little bottle within your light bulb in your branding, which I've never noticed before. And when I saw it, it was a bit of a eureka moment. When I was like, that's really cool.
Well, the eureka moment is why the whole concept of the design. So it's that kind of like cartoon, like, I've had an idea, and the whole thing was about, when I started, it was originally there was an idea that with electric that I was going to be doing loads of different recipes for everyone who wanted their own gin, kind of thing, and then realized that I would never sleep if I was doing that as a concept, because there's so much work involved in creating recipes, even if they are quicker than coming out with new beer recipes. Like, coming out with new gin recipes all the time is a lot, and then also the packaging side of it and design side of it is kind of, so doing a little bit like the kind of timber yard stuff and everything, that's great, but like doing it as a kind of the only thing I do just wasn't going to fly. But the idea was that kind of innovation and coming up with new ideas. So it was that stereotypical light bulb is an image, is a kind of symbol of innovation, and then it was just the logo came before the name of the company. So it was the light bulb was drawn with the bottle inside it before I even kind of came up with a name, and then it just worked backwards from there. So electric was still that kind of vibrance and that kind of brightness, and that was the name was kind of given to it for that. And then acris acris is the most incomprehensibly difficult thing to say, but like I think it's fair to say we had a briefing earlier this morning to make sure that we could all say the name correctly.
I wondered if I'd been saying it wrong for the last couple of years, but it turns out I hadn't. So, but
no, it's fine. I've been wondering if I've been saying it long gin. So,
and you both might notice why I've never even said the name once during the entire interview.
Your gin, this gin, your gin, electric's gin. It was, the original idea was to have like as a kind of iterative thing, like each gin would be named like Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. Like each letter would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Obviously, electric's not got that down that far. They got down that path very far, because we're still on A. But yeah, I realized that the gin was getting bottled, and I was kind of like, right, I haven't named it. Crap. So I kind of Googled interesting words beginning with A.
And that's what you do. That's what you got.
I like went through this big list and was sitting with my wife and was kind of like, what do you think of this? And we're like, no, it's not. And then Acris came up, and it means it comes from achromatic, so meaning without color. And the bottle was, I'd already decided the bottle was going to be this luminous orange, and then there was a nice kind of thing about, well, the gin is without color, but the outside of the bottle is flaming orange. And it was just like, I just quite liked it. It was a bit wide and a bit silly, and then it just kind of went from there. So yeah, I mean, I think like sort of, there are any number of distilleries have this really beautiful romantic story about how their name comes from this the source of their water or the glen that it was created in. And I was like, crap, what's the gin called? I need an interesting name. And then that's kind of, that's where we're at. So hopefully the second one will be named with a little bit more kind of a thought process to get it kind of a better story than me just kind of coming up with it based on this weird page called Cool Words Beginning with A.
Yeah. And obviously another milestone for you this year was the plastic free. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so it was more kind of a thing like realizing that it's really difficult in drinks production to go completely plastic free, and I'm still not plastic free as a company, primarily because of sending pallets, you wrap them in plastic, and pallet wrap is like this completely fundamental part of shipping, and it's really annoying because there's not been any progress to making new stuff, and there's a bunch of products that have been kicking around and people are like, oh, they're biodegradable, and you look into it and you need to do all this weird and wonderful stuff to them to make them biodegrade, and if you don't, they don't biodegrade at all. So there's a lot of kind of products that feel like they're being made for the sake of branding rather than actually being good for the environment. But I mean, the only thing you can really do is be as good as you possibly can. And with the bottle of gin, with the design of it, the bottle was always from the first time Acris was made, it's a glass bottle with a natural stopper and a wooden top on it. Just because natural cork, I love it. I mean, it's just that kind of thing. Even if you take the cork out and you smell it, it's got that really lovely kind of effect of having absorbed aromas from the gin, and it's got its own smell and everything, and the satisfaction and the kind of tactile thing of opening a natural cork out of a bottle is just something else. And the last thing with these stupid seals on the top, so these bits, which are now not plastic, used to be heat shrink, which is the same kind of idea as like it's a plastic that when you heat it up it shrinks and kind of makes sure you know that someone's not been meddling with the bottle of gin between when I bottled it and when you open it. And you have to have it by law. So they're basically a few pence each, and it always bugged me because I hated them, and they look terrible, and they used to split, and you used to have to put them on with a heat gun, and you'd burn your fingers, and I just wanted rid of them, and I realized it was like that was the only thing left that wasn't biodegradable or completely recyclable. So the most recyclable thing you can do is use something that's worth a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So I now use tin capsules, which are kind of like you get on like a really nice bottle of whiskey or a really nice bottle of wine, and they're 5 times the price of the cheap, horrible plastic ones, but they do get recycled because they're worth money as a recycled material. So the hard truth of the matter is things get recycled when someone can make money out of it the other end. Yeah. So that means that the whole bottle now is either biodegradable or recyclable. The boxes are all cardboard, obviously. The tape we use is a cardboard based tape. So that's all biodegradable or recyclable. And we do as much as possible at the distillery. We use green energy to power the still. And you just generally try and do more and more and more in terms of what we can to make it as kind of a eco-friendly operation as possible, and it becomes the bigger you get. If you start doing when you're small, it's easier to carry on when you get bigger. So yeah. I think that's something that both myself and the Portleaf guys who I share the distillery with, they're very much in the same boat, and they've been gradually making little changes to their packaging design to do as much as possible. So I think it's something we can do. I mean, one of the weight of the bottle is the trickiest thing because glass is very heavy, and obviously then use a lot of fuel. The flip side of that is if you use plastic, then you've still got the problem of using plastic, and it's lighter. But so everything's a compromise, but you just try and make as good a call as possible where you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you touched on the Portleaf there. Tell us about that's quite an unusual way to work. You know, we've been to a lot of distilleries, and I have we been to any others that you shared
No,
distillery space?
no.
I don't think we have. So
It's obviously quite a collaborative approach
Yeah.
to share the distillery space and that. So I guess, can you give us a bit more insight into how that came about?
Yeah, so the Portleaf Distillery, for anyone who's watching who doesn't know, they're two guys, Ian and Paddy, who are building, in the process of putting together a beautiful new whiskey distillery, which is going to open right beside Ocean Terminal, so beside the Royal Yacht Britannia in Leith. And we started talking absolutely ages ago, and they were saying, like, look, we're going to be opening this whiskey distillery in Leith. At that point, it was a different site. And they were just like, we just wanted to say hello. It'd be good to work together at some point and do something. I was like, yeah, cool, fine, whatever. Sounds nice. But wasn't really at that point a clear kind of idea of what it could be. And then we got chatting a bit more, and they were kind of they were looking for someone to help them get their kind of gin production side up and running. And I was at that point beginning to get to a point where my tiny little room in this building with the 20-litre still was beginning to make me lose the will to live. And so we basically worked out, I helped them spec out this new site, which is the Tower Street Stillhouse down on Tower Street. And it's an imaginative name, but in a truly salubrious location beside a car pound. And it's, basically, so we moved in together as two businesses within this unit, and I helped them spec it out in terms of picking the still and getting the bottling equipment we needed and stuff. And then, we worked together on the recipe development for their gin, Linden Lime, and which you'll definitely have seen. And that got released, and then they've kind of, they have Andy now, who used to work at Edinburgh Gin, and he's their distiller. And I've got my company with me doing my gin as well. So there's basically two companies existing in this one distillery, using the same still, and it just makes a lot of sense. For one, we get on really well, I think, is the main part of it, is that it's been worked for the kind of 2 years, I think now we've been doing this. If we didn't get on, and they're like, everyone in the Portleaf company is a really good person, and I think that's the kind of foundation of it. Is it's a nice bunch of folk, and other than that, there's a real practical benefit from their perspective. Our relationship initially helped them get their distillery up and running, get their first product out the door, and then from my perspective, they're very much a bigger company than me in terms of their growth, in terms of how much gin they're putting out. So for me, that means that I, as a company, get the benefits of having that kind of shared buying power, effectively, of a larger company. So it just means that we can do things like we've got a van, but it costs us half as much as it would if we both had our own vans, and we don't use it all the time, so it makes sense. We pay half the rent on a forklift, like all these like kind of really mundane things that people get to, and they're like, great, now I've got to find that extra money myself. It's like, we get to that point, we have to do it. We just split the costs. So it's just nice to have this relationship, and then we help each other out where we can, and it's a good working situation.
And obviously,
sorry,
James. And obviously, you upgraded the office within the distillery as well. We brought up a picture earlier on to show the distillery, and obviously, you guys were working from what amounted to a beautifully painted garden shed, but obviously more recently it's been upgraded to a larger sort of 20-foot by 14-foot office.
Yeah, it's still a shed.
Yeah, it's just a bigger shed.
Yeah, I mean, it's still like got that kind of rustic garden centre smell to it when the heater's on. And yeah, it's a big shed, but it's a bit to kind of give a scale to this shed. It's now a shed with 6 desks in it, so it's bigger than your average, like kind of doing a little bit of potting in the bottom of the garden kind of thing. And it's the reason is basically we have this like fairly small industrial unit, and it's concrete floor, brick walls, and a tin roof, and it's like a fridge. And like all year it's colder in there than it is outside. Even winter and summer, it doesn't really matter. It's always colder. So there's a big gas heater on the wall, and that's great, but it's too close to our still for us to turn on. So it's all disconnected. So for fire safety. So there's no way to get warm in the still house other than going in the shed and with the radiators on. So yeah, it's very much everyone's like, oh, that's like the bougiest hipster thing I've ever seen, and you're like, no, it's very practical stuff that does freezing in the depths of winter when it's like 4 degrees inside in the main warehouse. So it's everyone sees it and kind of goes like, oh, that's cute, and you're like, no, it's about survival, to be honest.
And something, I mean, you've mentioned a few people that you've come across and worked with and collaborated with, like Jack Mayo and like Andy, was Edinburgh Gin and now Portaleith, the guys there at Portaleith, and probably a few others. So do you find that, is that like an Edinburgh thing, or, do you find that the Scottish gin sector in general is quite collaborative and quite supportive of each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's various kind of ways in which kind of companies can collaborate, and I think there's been one of the big ones recently was the hand sanitizer side of things is obviously a big thing. So loads of these like little producers, gin producers particularly, were rattling out loads of hand sanitizer for their local kind of GP surgeries, police, ambulance services, all this. Yep. And there was a lot of actually a WhatsApp group basically was created amongst Scottish distillers for people to just share help with each other in terms of like, where can I get hold of some 5-litre containers? Like, has anyone found any like plastic hand pump things, stuff like that? Yeah. And that was a very practical, like, kind of everyone kind of jumped on it and helped and got stuff done because it was such an important thing for people to be doing. But on a more kind of like lighthearted, like day-to-day production side, yeah, it's the same. And like, shockingly, you run out of juniper when you're making gin, and you're like, I can't believe this has happened. And then it's a case of like messaging around Edinburgh Gin or Pickering's or whoever and saying like, look, I'm really sorry, but I'm 6 kilograms down on this batch. Is there any chance you could spot me some until I can get my next delivery in? And the answer is it's never no. I mean, you help each other out. Yeah. What I'd really like to see more of is more of what you see in the brewing industry, which is more kind of project-based collaboration. So like brewing collaborations are a dime a dozen, and they're done by all breweries. Yeah. And it's a case of like, let's make a product together. And I don't know if it's just because in the gin industry that might be a bit, well, we're still going to make a gin, so what's the difference? But I always think it's fun, and it's like when I'm doing stuff with when I've done stuff with Joe Radford from Timbyard, for instance, that's fascinating because he's got much more kind of his finger on the pulse in terms of all these kind of mad ingredients that he's seen or tasted. And it'd be really nice to do things like that with, for me to do things with chefs or people who've just got a different thought process or a different set of experiences in terms of flavors or anything like that. So I think, yeah, there's a great collaborative kind of assistance goes on between people. And it really helps when you've absolutely made a complete idiot of yourself and forgotten to order juniper, which I realise I've now admitted to the world. But
no, that's really cool to hear. That's really that is.
I'm still hoping for an electric spirit company 4 Pillars.
Oh yeah,
crossover at some point.
I think there was a comment about that on Twitter, and I said to them, I was like, yeah, as long as we're doing it at your gaff and not mine.
yeah, no problem going over there, absolutely.
Any kind of long distance collaborations like that would be good fun. Yeah. But I mean, even if it's not necessarily going places, it'd be a case of like, right, okay, let's both do a gin with these ingredients and see like what, because I mean, like, I think there's the thing that, like, when we're saying with the recipe development side, you could give 2 distillers the exact same ingredients, and the gins they make would be completely different. Yeah. It's just that level of variety, that even just choosing slightly different varieties or geographical origins, or even just playing wildly with the kind of dosing you're doing or the method you're using to get the flavor out. There's so many variables that creep in when you're making a recipe. So yeah, that kind of stuff would be great fun to do. Even be fun was like, get every Edinburgh distillery the same ingredients, and we'll all make a gin, and then we can have a battle of the brands in terms of who makes the most interesting product out of them. I've thrown that out there, so if any of Pickering's and Edinburgh Gin are listening, let's see that.
A Scottish Gin Royal Rumble.
Yeah, just something that's a good laugh, and then people can all taste it and see what they think. But I think collaboration is good fun. So I think that's the main thing. It should always be a kind of positive thing, and whether it's for something really useful in terms of the hand sanitizer, or whether it's something that's just a good laugh, it's something that I'd really like to see more of, and hopefully we get that a bit more in the future.
Yeah, cool. And where do you stand on the term Scottish gin? Would you like to see some form of protection for the term?
Um, yeah, I would. I think it's a very complicated subject, and I think it's been, as producers, we talk about it a lot, and I think the main thing for me is it should always be about transparency. I think that's more important to me almost than saying like it's Scottish gin. It's more, I would always want a consumer to feel that they understand exactly what it is that like my product is. So if someone asks me like, right, where's your gin made? Well, there's an address on the back of the bottle. Like, that's it. Like, your answer should never be too complicated. If someone asks a simple question about your product, do you make your own base spirit? No, I don't. The reason I don't, because I like consistency and because I don't have the capacity or the money to make my own base spirit. And I work with a great company, and it comes from a distillery in Switzerland, and it's organic, and we've used it since day one at the distillery. So that's the kind of you should always be able to say, this is what I do and this is why I do it. Mm-hmm. And if, in terms of Scottish gin, I think as long as people are comfortable that they're being honest about their product and they're being honest to their consumers, then that's something that I think anyone can get behind.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's any number of people making gin in different ways, and I think it's kind of up to consumers to really decide when they want to start caring about that, because you can't make people care about something. It's not a big enough issue for consumers if they don't want to know. I think consumer knowledge is increasing all the time, and if people are curious enough to find out anything about a product, they can find out all they want. So it's something that's very difficult to kind of naturally conceal from anyone. So no, I think like anything, as a brand, you should be very transparent about what you do, and that keeps people happy. Yeah. So yeah, I think Scotch whiskey has done an incredible job out of it, but I don't necessarily think that there's the will in the industry to do something similar with gin. So I wouldn't imagine, based on how long this discussion's been going in the industry, I don't imagine there's going to be much change on that in the near future in terms of a kind of Scotch whiskey regulations for gin, just because the market's diversified so much into what it is now. So maybe a protected term for Scottish style, like London Dry, effectively, might be something that would be more manageable to do. But yeah, again, what that would be and whether my gin would fit in it, who knows? Like, it's that kind of, you're kind of talking hypotheticals about something that I've just kind of thought about in my head. So
yeah. No, I mean, fundamentally, I think made in Scotland is, that's probably where it should sit, shouldn't it?
And I think it should be about protecting the consumer, that it educates them and it lets them have that informed information to then make that informed buying decision. That it says Scottish gin in the bottle, so I automatically presume it must be a Scottish gin made in Scotland.
Yeah, and I think it's something certainly from being a member of Scotland Food and Drink. Like, they're very very good about helping brands to understand that brand Scotland, which can often, when you live in Edinburgh, can feel a little bit parochial and a little bit tartan and bagpipe music blaring out of shops when you're walking on the street. But it's a huge deal in other countries. Scotland is synonymous with incredible quality in food and drink, and I think perhaps we kind of maybe take it a little bit for granted in ourselves when we're surrounded by it. But if you go abroad and speak to people about our country and what it produces, there's tremendous respect and enthusiasm for it, and it's something that it would be good to have some kind of definition, I guess. But I think I've been involved in too many discussions amongst distillers.
Sorry, I feel like that was our last question. I feel like we ended on a really
No, it's. I think you've ended on the unanswerable question.
Yeah,
that has,
sorry about that. Yeah,
has dominated Scottish distilling for the last 3 or 4 years. So. But yeah, no, it's good being. I think making gin in Scotland's a great place to be making it, and making it in Edinburgh is brilliant as well. It's such a fantastic city to be producing a gin, and having so many kind of little distilleries popping up in the last few years, and we've got a real community here in terms of manufacturing, and actually just having that kind of historical link to production and spirits production in Edinburgh and Leith particularly is such a great thing, that you're starting to see companies like Krabby's opening their whiskey distillery, Holyrood opening theirs, and the Port Leith guys building this amazing vertical distillery. It's really kind of bringing back a kind of effectively dead industry. to a city that's kind of lost a lot of industry. So yeah, it's really good that it's happening.
Yeah, no, it's been amazing to see actually. You'll be challenging the Highlands for
number of producers.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, there's some crackers. I mean, there was I was doing a bit of research. I'm finally, because there's a pandemic on, I'm finally getting around to doing a website. So one of the things I was looking at is the history of distilling in Leith, and there's some belters. But there was a company who existed in Leith that famously were they gave out grey parrots as a marketing tool. And they were trained to basically say it was the Patterson's whiskey, and they were trained to say the Patterson's marketing line.
Wow.
And they were given out bars. Patterson's went very bust, and you'll be shocked to hear, and their founders went to jail for a fraud. So it was this is a long time ago. So it's, if I have a chance to read it, it's about one of the less successful stories of alcohol production in Leith in Edinburgh. But it's one of the few times that I've ever heard of parrots being used for marketing purposes.
Yeah. Well, watch this space.
It's not been done. It's not been done yet, but you never know.
Yeah.
No, well, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us. That's been really great, and I'm sure a lot of comments there and a lot of love for Acrus. So. Thanks for doing that. And though anyone who misses it, this is available on our Facebook page, but on YouTube coming soon as well. So if you've missed it live, you can catch up after. But thanks, James.
No worries. If you've got any questions, anyone who's got anything they want to ask, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or email. I mean, anything. Just give me a shout. I'm happy to chat away.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll see you face to face shortly.
Yeah, so 2 meters at the very least.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your time tonight, James. You take care, okay?
See you later.
Cheers, everyone, for watching. Thanks.
Bye.
Great, that was good to chat. We went a little bit over, but it was that was really good fun. Yeah. And thanks to James for taking the time to answer all those questions. Hopefully
He's always just such a nice guy, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that was really good. So thanks everyone that tuned in. On Wednesday we've got David from Gin School Scotland. David and the Gin School Scotland is a little outfit. Well, I say little, that's probably not doing him justice, but he works for himself, but he actually goes out and does tailor-made events. So quite interesting, a different take on what we've done.
Tailor-made tasting events and sort of helping people discover more about Scottish gin, I guess.
Yeah, and local gins depending on where he does his events. So he very much supports local wherever he is. But that'll be good fun.
Yeah, he's joining us on Wednesday, and then on Friday we've got Gordon and Vanessa from Badachro Gin joining us.
Yeah.
So that'll be good fun as well.
Yeah.
So thanks again to everybody for watching. Obviously, if you are having a drink tonight, enjoy it responsibly. Stay safe, and we'll catch you again soon. Cheers.
Good night.